This is the Welcome to Humanity podcast with thought leader and transformative psychiatrist, Dr. Fred Moss. This show focuses on the betterment of humanity on a global scale. Each episode will leave you enlightened, inspired, and ready to make an impact in your world. Welcome to the show. Welcome to your life. Welcome to humanity. Here's Dr. Fred.
Tonight, I couldn't be more excited. I couldn't be more honored to have a good friend and colleague of mine joining us today, someone who is completely committed to transforming the conversation of mental illness on a global scale, and then absolutely taking the courageous steps necessary to make that happen. It's just a pleasure to have Beatrice Birch with us today. And Beatrice is the founder of Inner Fire, which she'll tell us a little bit about. I haven't spoken with Beatrice in a few months, and just given what I know about her, this place has grown and developed in leaps and bounds since we last spoke. And I can't wait to really get an update of where she is. Where I am today is in Los Angeles. I'm in sunny Los Angeles, California, and it's actually a little bit cold today. I have worked a full day, and I'm off to tomorrow where I have a number of different interviews. And then this weekend is my birthday. So I'll be turning 62 on Sunday, and I'm going to Texas. And I'll be there for at least 2 days to be with my children. So both of my children and me will be together in Austin for Saturday night celebration. And that'll be the first time that the three of us were together for a number of years. And it just represents such a tremendous sort of a culmination of these 62 years to be able to have a loving relationship with my children, which is what's going on right now. And then to be able to share my 62nd birthday with them as I ride down into Texas, where I really have nothing to do with Texas other than I have two children who live there in both Dallas and Austin. So I'm looking forward to my weekend, and really also looking forward to today's conversation. Again, today's conversation is with the founder of Inner Fire. And let me say a little bit about her, and then we'll let her take the air. When I first began, I guess I don't even know when it was that I first began, but when I started becoming a little bit louder about the idea that medications and now diagnoses are somewhat of a traumatic experience subject to transformation, I got in touch with a man named Robert Whitaker, who some of you may know. Robert will also be a future guest on this podcast and is already scheduled for a future date. So Robert and I were talking, and, I asked him, he was very excited about the work I was doing, which included going around the world and finding out how mental illness is treated and dealt with and basically described, and all the fundamental ways that mental illness can be managed in different diverse cultures globally. So he became very excited about that. And he then told me that there was one person he wanted me to meet. And I had not heard of this person, but he said, oh yeah, and she's in the United States, which was just shocking to me, because it turned out that I was really pretty certain that the United States didn't have as much advocates as it could have in the area of really transforming the base conversation of what mental illness is. And so he told me Beatrice's name. And, before too long, I was on a plane to Vermont in order to spend some time with Beatrice. And we spent a good number of days together on two separate occasions, walking through her tremendously beautiful property and learning a little bit about what both of us were up to. Since that time, we've gone sort of parallel ways, and now we're back together today for our podcast interview. Before we dive into today's conversation with Beatrice Birch, I wanted to take just a minute to let you know that I have just finished putting together the audiobook version of my soon-to-be-released book, The Creative 8. The book teaches a super simple method for healing that utilizes creativity and self-expression primarily. As a listener to Welcome to Humanity podcast, I want to give you a completely free copy of this audiobook as a genuine thank you for listening to the show. All you need to do is go to welcometohumanity.net/creative. I've used this Creative 8 methodology with both psychiatric patients and coaching clients for several years, and I'm getting just great results. Guess what? The method only takes 5 minutes. No kidding. Download your free copy of the Creative 8 audiobook today at welcometohumanity.net/creative. Now, let's get back to our conversation with Beatrice Birch. Welcome to Humanity. Beatrice Birch, the founder of Inner Fire. Welcome, Beatrice. It's just great to have you here.
Thank you very much, Fred. It's very nice to have another conversation with you and share it with those who are listening.
Yeah. So my listeners are going to be really curious about like, who is this woman from Inner Fire that Whitaker told you had to meet? So, let me just hoist you up there and you can tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, I worked in England for about 25 years, where in medical practices, national health practices, where we never medicated anybody with these psychotropic meds. Instead, we used homeopathy and we used a variety of artistic therapies. And I am an artistic therapist, a Hauschka artistic therapist. And depending on the individual situation, we will use watercolor, clay, pastel, something called form drawing. Depending on the situation, there are other artistic therapies known as speech arts, eurythmy, which is a form of movement, spatial dynamics, another movement. And so when I returned to the United States, it's probably now close to 20 years ago, I was horrified, Fred, to see how quickly people are being medicated. They're not being listened to. And it seems as if doctor and patient are trapped in a system. And recently, a doctor got in touch with me, and her main clientele are suicidal psychiatrists. So we're all suffering. And I've had many a person say to me, the meds are not working, it's not the answer. But we have to have a whole system change in order to put the individual first. And we all know that life isn't easy. Maybe I should just mention what Inner Fire is.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes, for sure. Please.
So Inner Fire, we've been going 5.5 years.
Congratulations. Fabulous.
Yeah. We've had about 30 people go through the program. And I would define it as it's a proactive healing community offering people the choice to recover from debilitating and traumatic life experiences, which we know typically can lead to mental health or addiction issues, but without the use of the psychotropic meds. So I want to emphasize that we are not against medication, but we are pro-choice. We believe that it's the right of the individual to choose how they want to deal with the challenges in life. And so we help people who are wanting to avoid medications altogether. And typically in your first, second year in college, there are oftentimes breaks. There are many things. Colleges can be pretty crazy nowadays. Or people who want to taper off their medications or to a level which works for them. Or people who, let's say, have come off their benzodiazepines and are still reeling from the withdrawal symptoms of them. So that's what we do, and I can explain a little bit later about the program. But I'll mention the catalyst for this was when I was working as a consultant at a rehab at one point, and people were seeing remarkable changes in the residents there. And I think it has all to do with the fact they felt really loved by me, interested. I believe that I see people as creators and not victims.
Isn't that great? It's just...
Yeah, and it's amazing. Yeah. It's actually, but we're human beings and we are creators and we can do the most remarkable things under the most awful circumstances. And then at one point, Fred, a number of individuals came to see me independent of each other, but they all did the same thing. They came into the room, stood straight in front of me, and said, "I hate being medicated. Isn't there a choice?" And I knew there was a choice, and I wasn't going to lie. And I told them of different situations, different opportunities, Robert Whitaker's book and his work, and Mad in America and others. What happened eventually when these people left the rehab, I heard roughly within 2 years of their departure, 6 of them had taken their life. They were not prepared to live a life which they considered a zombie-type existence where they're disconnected from their clarity of thinking, from their heartfelt feelings, and from their intentional willing. And I think many people who are wrestling under the influence of a cocktail of medications, that's why there's so much cutting going on. That's one reason why there's so the suicidal rate has gone up, and people are told you're going to have to live with these medications the rest of your life. And it's like, well, if this is the kind of life I'm going to have, well, then no, thank you.
Yeah.
And I think it's so, so important to see the rise in suicide goes alongside the rise in these dishing out these psychotropic medications. Now, there may be, Fred, people who are listening who will say very clearly, the only reason I can get to work today and I can hold down a job and take care of my family is because I do take a little bit of medication. And so we're not arguing that. I'm not arguing that at all. I'm just saying that if somebody is not happy on their medication, they should be able to have the support to come off it slowly, slowly, and carefully. You see?
Yes, I do. Thank you for that. Let's just clarify a couple things. First of all, where are you? Let's get that right on the table. Where is the organization where is Interfire?
Yeah, we're in the southeast corner of Vermont. And you speak about being in sunny Los Angeles. Well, we've got snow still on the ground here, but we have beautiful cobalt blue skies too. But so we're near a great town called Brattleboro. So southeast corner, just on the edge of New Hampshire.
Yes. Okay. Beautiful. All right. Well, I just want to see if I got the point here. I think that there has been a greater conviction that I'm hearing in your words than the last time you spoke, and maybe that's more in my listening than in what you're saying, or some version of both. But what I'm hearing is this idea that you're making it clear that you're not fighting the use of medicine for those people who find medicine helpful. That you're not here to argue that in any way whatsoever.
Yeah.
And what you're really after are the people who feel like they need to be, or have been told that they need to be, or that they're going to be left on these medications for a good long time or forever, and that they're feeling worse about their life as a result of being on their medicine, and then get to some degree of hopelessness if they in fact don't have a choice from that point. And you're there to offer them a choice to consider other possibilities and alternatives. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, Fred, it is. And, just maybe I could also add this, that I would be one happy woman if one day we no longer even use the term mental health. In my experience, we're talking about soul health.
Say a little bit more about that, Beatrice. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, our heads, it's such a materialistic view of the human being. Our heads are not disconnected from our heart and our will. Typically, if I have gone through some traumatic situation in my life where I've seen something awful and I take a deep in-breath, and I can't breathe out for fear of falling apart, my soul is stuck in the in-breath, you could say. Now, I'm speaking layman's terms, but everyone can understand it. Or let's say, Fred, if I was sexually abused, I would be as far out of this body of pain as possible.
Right.
And that means I've lost my center. And when I lose my center, when my soul is out of balance for very good reasons, then I hear voices or I'm stuck. You see, and so what we aim to do at Inner Fire is through the various artistic therapies, through our work program, which I can describe more, where there are 4 areas of particular work that we do, and everyone is involved. Everyone has their own individual schedule, and either you work in the kitchen and you prepare the meal for the rest of the community with our chef and nutritionist, and it's very close to the GAPS diet, not exactly, but it's high protein, high fat, no sugar, except for a little bit of in grains that have particularly a lot of protein in them or so. We use lacto-fermented foods, kimchi and sauerkraut and so on for the gut health. Or you work in the woods this time of year. There's nothing growing, of course, so we're working in the woods and everyone learns to chop down a tree with an axe. Then you 2-person saw it, and then you split the wood. And by the way, it's very interesting to realize I've had many a person come to me saying, when I split wood, I don't hear voices.
That's interesting. So let's back up on that. When you say everyone, you're meaning every single person who's there as I think you call them seekers, right? A seeker, learns how to literally cut down a tree and split wood. Is that correct?
Yes, we've got 43 acres and most of it's woodland.
So it's not for lack of supply. You're not going to run out of trees anytime soon.
But very intentionally, we needed enough land so that the seekers who come to Inner Fire could be physically engaged with their limbs. Because to be honest, Fred, I think we live in a pretty psychotic society. And by that, I mean, it's mostly the head that's educated. And when we educate the head and there's no music and there's no art in a child's education and they don't know what to do with their hands, only the best can play the sports and so on and so on, then you're just a head. And we all know anyone who's been wrestling with can't sleep at night because their thoughts are going round and round in their heads, And so what I'd say is that Inner Fire helps to develop the will-based intelligence. We have a heart-based intelligence, we have a head-based intelligence, and we have a will-based intelligence. And so when you help individuals to come down out of their heads where their thoughts are going round and round, or where if they've escaped, so to speak, into their heads, a good, healthy way to help them come back into their body is to teach them how to split wood or teach them how to dig in the garden or all these other physical activities that we do. And it's remarkable to see how people, first of all, they get tired and they sleep at night and so on. So there are these different areas. And then, of course, as I just touched on, the vegetable garden, we built our own hoop house. Everything is done by hand. A hoop house is a greenhouse. And we sow the seeds, we tend the seeds, you experience the process and you weed the seeds and then you harvest the fruit, the vegetables and so on. And then you cook them. And so you begin to see this abstract world, which it's become for so many people, begins to make sense, But I should also touch on, Fred, you mentioned, yes, we do use the term seekers for the people who come to Inner Fire. And there's, I think, a very special story that goes with that, if I could share.
Yes, please let us know. Yes.
So for many years, I worked in prisons in New York State, maximum and medium security prisons, as a volunteer. I'd go in, worked with alternatives to violence, and I'd go in the third weekend of every month for 12 hours on a Friday, Saturday, and 10 on Sunday. And it was remarkable. I totally loved going in and working with these extraordinary people.
Yeah.
And then I also painted with men in another prison in upstate New York. And one day, a beautiful young man who I'd been painting with for a while came to me and said, I was trying to write to a friend on the outside about this art class. And it's so hard to describe what happens here. Eventually, I wrote to my friend, it's an art class, but it's really a spiritual class. And then he looked me straight in the eyes and he said, this is what I was looking for on the outside. Isn't it strange I had to come to prison to find it? And I remember thinking, that you're all seekers. You're all looking for something more than this fast-paced, superficial, materialistic life. And so when it became clear that after these suicides, these 6 young people took their lives, I really saw it as a sacrifice actually on their part, that they took their lives as a wake-up call. Will we take note as to what we're doing to our young people? We're not helping them deal with the challenges of life. You don't help anybody by medicating them. It doesn't, they don't learn the tools to work through the challenges that and the opportunities for growth that these challenges give them. I just realized I have to find my colleagues. I have to bring the best of my life experience. And I've been very fortunate in many ways, helped found a number of initiatives in England and so on. So when I said to my husband, well, what will we call the people who come to Inner Fire? Not really that I want to call anybody anything other than a brother or sister or so, but I thought of Ian and I thought seekers. We call them seekers because these people are looking for something more. They're not content to go along with the medical model, so to speak.
Mm.
And in the same sense, Fred, the people who work here at Inner Fire, who get paid to be here, we refer to ourselves as guides in the same way that a midwife will guide the birthing process, or that the banks of a river guide the current. We don't want to block the current. We don't want to dam up the current, but we guide it. So the seeker, like the current, can carry on their life journey, but they have the support of people who believe in them, who are dedicated to their healing process, and who basically love them. And they know it. They can feel it. People are dumbfounded basically when they come here and they see, well, this is like a family. It's like there's nothing clinical about it, really.
That was my, impression. And I guess we haven't talked very much about our two trips there. We spent a couple days with Beatrice over there at Inner Fire in Vermont. And, it was shockingly, just astonishing, the capacity of love that just sits in the air, sits in the aura, sits in the energy of Inner Fire, even as you approach it from outside the grounds. There's something there about the natural expression that's available inside of art and inside of nature and inside of just being with other people and inside of not being inside of your head that offers a whole new possibility of rebirth. When you say midwife, I'm left with, that it really is a rebirthing, or in fact, a birthing process that you're facilitating there. Is that also fair to say, Beatrice?
I would say, yes, it is. And I say to the seekers themselves, your mother gave you your physical birth, but now with what's happened, you're reclaiming your life, you're rebirthing yourself. Mm-hmm. And I also have to say, it's certainly a beautiful place, and we do many wonderful things here as well. But I must say, it's hard work, Fred.
Yeah.
It's hard work. It's not a holiday camp, but we're dead serious about the healing process. Some places run as a business first and a healing second. I'm only into this for the healing process, and it's remarkable to see how people will come, and some cases they're shuffling their feet and their glazed eyes, but they're determined to come off their meds. So you have to want to come to Inner Fire. It's no place your parents drop their offspring or spouses. We have people ranging from 18, and the eldest thus far has been 74.
18 to 74. Incredible.
Yeah.
How long do people stay there, Beatrice?
Well, initially, to be honest, Fred, I was thinking in terms of a year, because at another rehab I worked at, I saw people coming and going all the time. And It was like this is a remarkable, like a remarkable business, but I don't see very many people getting well. And so just that people realize, particularly if you've been on your medication for half your life or so, it takes time. And I am so relieved. We have a wonderful psychiatrist who works with us. And I am so relieved that we don't have to race it, do it in a 3-week program, or you couldn't, or a three-month program. What we do is we help people taper slowly and carefully from their medication, and at the same time strengthen themselves on a deeper soul spiritual level.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
So, and that's the both, because I've met plenty of people who've come off their medication, but boy, are they angry.
You're right.
Boy, are they angry. And then, of course, Fred, there are people who come to Inner Fire who have not been on their medication for so long. And so their needs may be different. It may be that they're on fewer medications and the whole tapering process doesn't take quite so long. So we really do it on a very individual level. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we also have some people who have not been on any medication and they want to avoid being medicated. And so it depends so much on the individual and how committed they are to their healing journey and to working through the challenges that they meet. And in many cases, it's about changing really unhealthy habits. So there isn't, to answer your question, Fred, there isn't a set time limit. It's a very individual thing, but we just want to make sure that people have really gotten to a place when they leave inner fire where they can really move forward. And I hope never have to go into a rehab again in their lives. So to actually claim that the challenges that I've met in my life somehow, though I hate them or whatever, somehow they belong to me.
Right.
But I am more than my challenges, you see.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, some people have said, well, how do you know when people are well? And they go, and it's like, well, it's hard to say what healing is, because we certainly tell parents, we do not fix your child. We do not fix your spouse. And I can't tell you they're not going to have challenges in life once they leave inner fire. I mean, life in my personal situation seems to be about challenges all the time.
All the time. Yeah, right.
And it's our attitude toward them that this belongs to me for some reason,
Yes.
But so if somebody, we all have different words for this, Fred. I think of it as the divine creative self, and I'm not a religious person, I'll say, but the divine creative self that's within each one of us. Some people refer to it as the witness. I also like to think of it as the charioteer that guides the wild horses, so to speak, or the self. But if we have helped people connect with their divine creative self,
right,
before they leave, and they know I can work with any challenge that comes my way. I may not like it, and I might think, oh, bloody hell, here this is again, whatever, but I can do it, and I can find the right support, and I don't have to turn to medications and be numbed by their effects. I think, Fred, that's the closest I can come to saying there's healing. The healing journey continues, but now one has tools to work with it.
Beautiful. That's just terrific. Thank you so much for that, Beatrice. I'm Dr. Fred, and I'm with Beatrice Birch, who's the founder, creator, and really the primary soul center of a program, a center,
proactive healing community.
A healing community down in eastern Vermont, and called Inner Fire. And we were having a great conversation with this founder about the philosophy and the history that really drove the evolution of this extraordinary program. And we're really looking at how soul and love are here to reseed or reseat the area of life for which we all have gotten caught up in our own minds, and we've gotten caught up in our own heads. And as Beatrice's contention, and hard to argue, that we're all living in a psychotic world even as we speak right now. And there's an opportunity to bring some degree of some modicum of sanity to a world that otherwise is out of control and leaving a lot of people feeling helpless and disempowered. So today we have Beatrice Birch on with this interview. So thank you again for being here, Beatrice.
Sure.
Right. So we're going to shift a little bit here. I wonder about a couple things. Some of the questions I've been asking some of my guests, and I think we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, is like, what in the world, like if you had to pick one thing in the world that really, really bothers you, really you're here as a soul to address a particular issue, or that you're dumbfounded by the issue, something in the world that's askew, that gives you pain, that you could, with a flip of a switch or with a lot of hard work could resolve or fix. Can you tell us what would that be?
I can tell you, Fred, but I want to go back to something.
Oh, yes, please. Sorry.
Just to say, I mean, you a moment ago, you gave me a lot of credit as the center, but I want to emphasize that I cannot do this work alone. Mm-hmm. And I have extraordinary colleagues who are very committed and very creative and resourceful, and love, which is actually a very powerful force. There's nothing sentimental about love. That they make sacrifices to work here. Yeah, so I just want to acknowledge I can't do this alone.
I certainly agree with you. And we know, again, having had an actual visit and had some breakfasts, lunches, and dinners with you and your colleagues, I can attest to the amazing amount of love that exists between you and the people I met there who are committed to the same, making the same level of difference that you are, or that the soul of Inner Fire is dedicated to. So thank you for acknowledging them. And Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
definitely not being done by Beatrice alone. That's for
No,
sure.
sure. And so going back to your question, what concerns me very, very much, Fred, is reflected in the mental health world as the term to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
I find that a disgusting term to use in relation to human beings. You
Can you
maintain.
elaborate a
Yeah.
little bit? Yeah.
Yeah. You maintain tractors and trucks. What are we talking about when we're
Right.
talking about maintaining human beings? What's
Right.
that? Putting them on hold?
Right.
So that's outrageous. And I think we should be outraged when we hear that term. But we can only talk that way about human beings, Fred, if we have begun to see the human being as a thing, as just genes, hereditary forces. I saw once a bumper sticker and
Fascinating.
I thought this is good. This is good. Human beings are spiritual beings having an earthly experience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Some of us are more aware of that than others, but it's only because of that we can imagine that human beings are actually creators. You see? And so what greatly concerns me is how the view of the human being has become more and more materialistic. That we talk about fixing, and the heart is a pump. It's like the heart's not a pump. What are we on about? But I won't go into that. That's a very big thing. But it's too easy. It's too easy. And the medical world is trying to make the human being not complicated. The human being is profoundly complicated. And as somebody once said, you think we understand the brain? It's more complicated than the universe.
Yes.
So I would be, as I mentioned, I would be a very happy person if we spoke about soul health and really saw the human being as a whole organism, as a thinker, a feeler, and a doer, the soul forces of the human being. And at Inner Fire, we also work with the 4 layers, you could say, of the human being, where we all have a physical body. And the physical body we feed with the best food you could possibly imagine. It's all organic. It's like a 7-star restaurant, so to speak, and great quality. And we have a detox program where people receive liver compresses, and there's an infrared sauna. We use homeopathic and herbal remedies, which are incredibly supportive as well in this process. And then we also, a very key thing about Inner Fire is that rhythm. Rhythm is a secret to healing. And everybody who comes to Inner Fire says, I have no rhythm. I get up at any hour of the day. I eat at any time. There's no order. And if we don't have a rhythmic outer life, it's very hard to do the inner work that's necessary. So that's also very key. So everyone has their schedule. We have a schedule for the day. Breakfast begins at 7. After breakfast, we do the morning walk. We come back and we share how we're doing and what we're grateful for. And then we go out to our different areas of work, whether it's house cleaning, whether it's gardening, whether it's forestry work or cooking. And then lunch is at 12. And then after lunch, people get their compresses. And then in the afternoon, we have the therapies.
Yes.
And then we have supper. And then in the evening, we have different activities, which are really build community. So I think most people would say how important relationship is. Most people isolate it. And I will say, in relation to this, when I say that actually at Inner Fire, we hug each other. And that is a total no-no in the typical mental health world.
Oh, yes.
Where there are some people who have not been touched for years and years and years. And how inhumane is that? And their reasons, we know their reasons. But of course, we asked, do you mind? Can we have a hug? Or would you like to have a hug? And I don't think we've ever had anybody who said no.
Right.
People come into the office, Beatrice, can I have a hug? And it's like, of course you can have a hug.
Yeah, right.
Or
yeah.
whatever. And I remind people, we all have tear ducts. Men and women have tear ducts. And they need to be used at times. And so at Inner Fire, people cry. The guides cry too at times, Sometimes things are just so moving, and we share, and the tears flow, and then they dry up, and we get on with things. And we have anger is okay, but violence is unacceptable policy. But one of the first emotions that I've experienced in accompanying people as they taper is anger. They are so angry for their mother not protecting them.
I see.
Allowing them to be medicated. And of course, the parents, they think they're doing the best thing for their offspring. They want to believe the doctors, but the doctors, I mean, they're hoodwinked as well. They have no idea what these meds are going to do. And they try them on people. Try this one, try that, try this. And if you don't, some people are told, well, you can't work with me, So there's a lot of unhealthiness there. But so, yeah, these emotions, which we all have a spectrum of emotions within us. And the important thing is to be able to claim them. And the next step is, okay, what am I going to do about it? So just because I'm feeling rageful doesn't mean I'm going to attack people. I think about it. I talk about it. I go out and I do something constructive, or I see the anger as blocked creative energy. Yeah, it's energy that should be flowing, but that for some reason or other has been blocked.
Beatrice, I'm getting an idea, I'm kind of putting myself in a position of perhaps a new seeker who's interested in being with you. And, maybe I'm rageful about the medicines that my mother allowed me to be on, or the society forced me to be on, or I believe I need to be on because of X, Y, or Z reason. And I'm here to find a different way of being. What I'm hearing is that Inner Fire kind of offers a different pace of life, and also shining light on certain areas of life that otherwise have never been exposed before. That this is part of what's going on here, and an opportunity to look at life from an entirely different lens, and to slow down life so that you can see that, for instance, if I'm rageful, it doesn't mean I have to act on it instantly. I can do other things with it and actually translate it into some constructive activity, for instance. And there's other things like that where, with a special new light, with the support and love of the agency, with the capacity of looking at other possibilities beyond what conventional medicine has offered these people, there's a new level of sort of hope and willingness, and then discovery that's out there for these people that leave them with a new life to walk away with. Is that accurate?
It is, Fred. Yeah, the pace is, as I said, everything is done by hand. We actually have the seekers have no technology. The cell phone doesn't work here anyway. and computers, no access. And, most people are relieved. No more Facebook for a while.
Right.
And even radios, I remember one seeker in her second or third day when we were washing the dishes, and she said to one of our guides, "Can we listen to music?" And he said, "Well, do you sing?" And she said, "Yes." And there she's saying such a beautiful voice. And everyone started singing with her. So it's sort of like homemade. We try to create it ourselves rather than relying on something from outside,
Yes.
And that's really exciting.
You speak towards the meal times there. And, I had the privilege with my partner, Alexandra, to be there for a few of those meals. And you really are, you're right to call it a 7. I'm thinking 7 stars. Yeah, that's about right. 7 stars. And part of the beauty of the 7 stars is that the level of tender, loving care that goes into every single stroke and every single slice and every single peel of the meal as it's being made is just over the top on a regular basis. And, when you throw in that the people who are making the dinner are singing from their soul while they're making it, it makes sense why the 5 stars even can be upgraded to 7 stars. So,
So when people leave Inner Fire, they're empowered to be able, they know how to cook properly. And that's their choice. Whether they continue with a no sugar diet, that's their business, But if they want to eat a good, wholesome diet, they know how to do it. And many people say, I always get ill in the winter. This is the first winter I haven't gotten ill.
Right.
Well, you're living a balanced life. Every
Yes.
day, it doesn't matter if it's raining or snowing or whatever, we're outside for some part of the day. And then you're inside, you're working on a deeper soul spiritual level, you're working physically, your whole self is engaged while
Right.
you're here.
Just beautiful.
Yeah.
We're here with Beatrice Birch. Beatrice is the founder and creator, and well, anyways, any way she wants to excel it, she is the center soul of a program of a healing community in southeastern Vermont called Inner Fire that is just taking people from a highly disempowered state to a completely empowered state and letting them free into the world as creators when they had their self really looking down a tunnel of near hopelessness prior to arriving at the Inner Fire. So thanks for being exactly who you are, Beatrice. It's just wonderful to know you. It's wonderful to work with you. It's actually wonderful to be on the planet at the same time as you. So thanks for being here.
Fred, you're welcome. May I mention one thing also,
Sure.
Fred, is that one of the greatest challenges for me in this whole thing is that we're private pay.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah, for Inner Fire to be what it needs to be, really, it has to be available for people regardless of their race, their religion, their financial background, that we simply can meet in our humanity. Now, the Department of Mental Health is interested in us, and I'm hoping that they will sponsor a few beds. At the most, we'll never have more than 12 people. We don't want it to get larger. I have been asked to start an Inner Fire in Texas, Northern California, Detroit, and the UK. But until we finish this one, that's not going to happen, really. But we need to find a way. Hopefully the department will help us, but we're in a system where there's all about quick fixes. But we also have what we call a supporter seeker fund. And we've been able to support 3 people for 2.5 years with that. But then the board, we are not-for-profit and we're licensed as a TCR, Therapeutic Community Residence. So we're recognized by the state. Our board said, we need now to use this money, what donations come in for the building. So we recently completed the east wing of the Inner Fire home. So we have space for 9 people there. Then the West Wing will come in time. But I think you'll find this very interesting, Fred and others. What we're aiming to build next is our arts and drama barn, because I would love in January and February, when life is a bit slow here in Vermont, to all of us guides and seekers together put on a theatrical production that we offer the community who's been so supportive of Inner Fire to come and share with us. And then it's also would give us a chance to do more group work together, which would be great. But a thought came to me recently. There's not a single parent or a spouse who has come to Inner Fire who has not said to me, I need Inner Fire. I'm exhausted. I'm angry. I'm confused. And they have done so much work for their children, so trying to support them in the ways they can. It suddenly dawned on me, with this arts and drama barn, we could actually have retreats for parents where they could come and they could split wood and they could learn how to cook properly and they could have support with the artistic therapies and group work together. And so that's something that's really living very strongly. We need the space, of course, and that'll be about $300,000 to complete that. And then I mentioned this doctor whose main clientele are suicidal psychiatrists. And I thought, my goodness, we could have retreats for psychiatrists where they could come 4 times a year and they could see a totally different healing process happening. And they could have support from other psychiatrists who've learned how to help people taper. And we have a lot of support. We have a lot of people who we could draw upon for that. And then more recently, at some of the public speaking I've been asked to do, I've had people coming to me saying, but couldn't I just come for like 3 weeks? It would help me. It would help me get out of a habitual way of living. It would help me to learn how to start cooking properly. And so I think we've pretty much said, yes, we're going to start welcoming people to come as long as there's space.
Wow.
The seekers, of course, come first. But if somebody needs to take time out and come and be with us for a period of time, then sure, I think we should stretch to that too.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. There's several fundamental new ideas on the front edge, and I know I couldn't hold you to always being innovative and generative on the front edge. And these are beautiful ideas. Brilliant.
Well, and then we also have, Fred, I mean, it sort of could go on and on. We happen to have, there's a beautiful piece of farmland across the road from us, which I've been asked, would we be willing to start a life-sharing community?
Is that Norman's land?
Yep, Norman's land, yeah. And so that
I'm very familiar with that piece, yeah.
And so, because there are some people parents who are getting older and they know their offspring needs support and they want them to have a valuable, interesting, and not just sit in some group home smoking cigarettes and drinking energy drinks,
Yes.
Like what can happen? So, because we have people who have looked after the hens here and who have done all these different therapies, but they just won't manage to live on their own.
You're right.
And so we're really hoping that someone will come and buy this piece of land. Inner Fire cannot. We've got our hands full, but to have someone who would like to be a colleague of Inner Fire's, where graduates of Inner Fire could come, who don't want to go into our creative living community, which we'll have in Brattleboro, some people who want the town and some people who don't want the noise of the town. They just want the country,
Mm-hmm.
So there's so many possibilities, and you just got to listen and just to trust and hope. I mention it to almost everyone who comes here, saying we also have a beautiful house at the end of Parker Road with 800 acres. It would be wonderful to have somebody connected to Inner Fire do that, and maybe do Airbnb for parents who want to come for periods of time. And we see.
Yes.
But there's a lot of potential, but we do need that financial support for our Support a Seeker Fund to help a person who otherwise would not be able to come to Inner Fire to come. And then to just finish the building so that, it's a real model.
Yeah.
And it's exciting. I did get an email from South Africa a while ago saying even knowing Inner Fire exists gives us hope.
Isn't that just great? Just beautiful.
Yeah. But it's also quite sad and desperate, Fred, because why aren't there more of these?
Right.
Why isn't there more choice for our young people? And now 3, 4, 5-year-olds are being medicated. I understand even they're trying to medicate fetuses, but if we look at our school system, Fred, what healthy young child should sit behind a desk for hours on end?
Exactly.
Childhood is about action. It's about movement.
Exactly, yes.
It's about learning by doing, not always just the head again. And if the child acts up, a good, healthy child acts up, they're labeled as ADD and they're Ritalined, And Ritalin, we know, is a threshold drug.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, I come back to it again. There's some people who will say a little bit of Ritalin really helps me.
Right.
So again, there's no judgment, but I'm just saying I've met too many people, beautiful people, who have either taken their life or are desperate because they don't want to be medicated. They want to be actively engaged in their healing process and digest and work through the traumatic experiences they've had.
Right. Yeah, it seems like there really is. Maybe we're reaching a threshold in cultural evolution that has us now being able to have open discussions like this one that are creating new possibilities that we up until now really weren't available. And maybe there's something on the front edge here, birthing from your work and some of the work that other folks are up to really alter this conversation of what had been called mental illness, and on a global scale, making a new capacity for healing available to those that perhaps thought it was never going to be available to them again.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. Well, that's really fabulous. It's wonderful to catch up with you today. I'm just honored to have had this conversation. There's like a question I have here: I'm taking the empathic view of any of our listeners, and they're like, okay, this is an amazing woman. This is an amazing program. How can I get in touch? Maybe I want to make a donation, or how can I offer services or ideas? Or maybe I have somebody who wants to be considered as a seeker, or maybe even myself as a seeker. And if any of that's the case, Beatrice, how would anyone, quickly and efficiently get in touch with you?
Sure. Well, you could email info@innerfire.us, or me personally, Beatrice.innerfire@gmail. Beatrice.innerfire@gmail. And the phone number is also possible.
Yes.
And that's 802-221-8051. And for anyone who does go to our website, www.innerfire.us, on the home page, you'll see an interview, which will give you a pretty good picture as to what happens and why. But if you go to our TV tab, you'll see the celebratory opening of the East Wing of the Inner Fire home, where Robert Whitaker came, and he's been a tremendous support to us and spoke about the history of mental health. And so I think that's a very helpful thing to watch as well.
Beautiful.
And the website is also pretty comprehensive. I will say that we want to make sure it's a match. So, if someone is interested. So what we do is we invite people to come for 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And during the 3 days, typically it's a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. All this is on the website about the 3-day visit. But typically Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, in which time the individual engages fully in the program. And then on the Friday afternoon, they meet with the guides and we discuss, does this place feel safe to you? And actually, we've had many people say it's the first place they've ever felt safe.
Isn't that great? Oh.
And you can talk about anything and so on. But so is this the right place? And so there can be a discussion. And if it is, then typically, if there's space, someone maybe to start on the Monday or so. But we have people from all over the country who are interested in coming.
Yes.
Well, who have come.
Of course.
Who have come. Yeah.
Yes. Beautiful.
Just to say, there are testimonies to watch. And I think a very key thing is that I remember one father saying to me in our first year, "You saved my daughter's life." And I turned to him, I said, "I did not save your daughter's life. Your daughter stayed engaged in the program, and she saved her life." And
Right.
I think that's a very, very important aspect. It's about empowering people. We are serving their empowerment. We're giving them opportunities where they can tap untapped wells within their innermost soul, really. And that's all about connecting with the Creator within.
Yes.
Yes. Which is inside all of us. We may not know it at times, but it is.
Right.
Yeah.
That's just fabulous. Well, Beatrice, it's just always a true inspiration to touch base with you. It's an honor to be your friend. It's an honor to be a colleague while we, both meander ourselves through what it means to make a difference in this world of healing of the soul, healing of the person. And I see you as a soul sister in that regard. So thank you for being you again. And thank you for joining us on this podcast.
Thank you very much, Fred, too.
Right. It's been a deep pleasure. And I hope to talk soon. Just talking about that food has me wanting to fly out there this evening. And, I also have such fond memory of that chicken coop of yours. And I just, with those fresh eggs coming out of there. So,
of course. Yeah.
Just a beautiful place and a beautiful woman and a beautiful mission and really getting stuff done, putting her feet on the ground and really changing lives. My honor to be with Beatrice Birch this evening. We'll talk again soon. Thanks so much, Beatrice, and to my listeners. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, Beatrice.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into our show today. Something I really loved about this interview with Beatrice, I really appreciated what she was talking about when she's talking about just how work and creativity have such an intimate relationship with how people see the world and then therefore how they see themselves and what kind of health is available, what kind of healing is available to almost anyone who really seeks it out as a seeker. Perhaps as you were listening to this show today, you thought of a person, or maybe even 2 or 3, who would like to hear this episode. Why not reach out to them right now and invite them to listen and to subscribe to the Welcome to Humanity podcast? And speaking of subscribing, I'd like to ask you a favor that is small in effort, though really huge in the impact it would make. First, could you take just a minute to hit the subscribe button on your own podcast player? That way you'll get the latest episodes as they become available. And secondly, if you really appreciate what we do here, could you just take about 5 minutes to leave a review on the Apple Podcast site? As it turns out, subscribes and reviews are 2 major ways we can reach more listeners with the Welcome to Humanity podcast. And if the conversations we have here contribute to your life, please pay it forward by subscribing and leaving a review so you can bring your same truth to other people. I would be really grateful for your support. And to catch up with past episodes, head on over to welcometohumanity.net/podcast. So until next time, this is Dr. Fred, and this has been the Welcome to Humanity podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Have a beautiful day.